When the Galactic Senate cast their vote, they thought they'd silenced Earth forever. Stripped of alliances, mocked across the stars, and branded a rogue world, humanity vanished without a word. But in the shadows, we were watching. Waiting. Preparing. Because the Senate didn't just vote against a planet, they voted against the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And now, we're done playing nice. The chamber's ceiling soared like a cathedral of stars, lined with translucent panels that shimmered with every shift in Lumina Prime's orbit. Inside, silence had weight. Thousands of delegates from across the galaxy sat in gilded tiers, their gazes fixed on the central platform. In the center stood Admiral Sylvia Kane, draped in Earth's midnight blue uniform, her silver insignia gleaming like the edge of a blade. She wasn't here to plead. She was here to make it clear. The data is unaltered, Kane said, her voice calm, but edged with steel. The Zenari mining operation on Mykar 4 collapsed due to illegal drilling at unsafe pressure levels. 38,000 civilians died in less than 3 minutes. The holodisplay behind her flared to life. Architectural schematics, seismic readouts, death tolls logged by orbital AI drones. The evidence was surgical in its clarity. And your implication, Admiral? Asked High Chancellor Trevok of the Dressari Dominion, his tone oozing politeness. That the Republic was complicit? I'm not implying anything, she said. I'm stating that the Zenari knowingly violated Republic safety protocols. And the Senate allowed it by refusing oversight. That makes this body. Her gaze swept the tiers. Accountable. A murmur stirred the chamber. Some alien delegates shifted uncomfortably, others sneered. Earth oversteps again, grumbled Minister Vorn of the Keltar Combine. Always the human need to moralize. Kane didn't flinch. Justice is not a uniquely human concept. But if it's inconvenient for your wallets, I can understand the hostility. Gasps rippled through the rows. Trevok raised a webbed hand. You risk censure for such accusations, Admiral. I risk more if I remain silent. Then let the vote decide. The Chancellor didn't waste time. He gestured, and the senatorial display ignited with holographic vote spheres hovering before each delegate. One by one, lights turned red. Against. 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 Kane watched without expression. Even Earth's so-called allies hesitated, then caved. The fear of economic sanctions. Of Zenari reprisals. Of falling out of step with the dominant bloc. Finally, the count froze. 312 against. 9 in favor. The hologram dimmed. Trevok folded his long fingers. Earth's charges are dismissed. This assembly finds no sufficient basis for further inquiry. Kane stood still. For a moment, the galaxy itself seemed to pause. And then, without a word, she deactivated her presentation. The holo vanished. She turned from the platform and walked down the steps, alone, boots clicking like slow thunder in the silence. No aid followed. No envoy greeted her. The weight of exile pressed down, but she carried it like a shield. As she reached the exit, a reporter bot floated near. Admiral Kane, it chirped. Do you have a statement for the Republic? She stopped. Just for a heartbeat. Yes. She looked back at the chamber, her voice low but recorded by every hidden mic, every lens, every broadcast relay. You just voted against Earth. That was your last mistake. The chamber didn't react. Not yet. But across the galaxy, in the homes of those who watched, military outposts, trade hubs, border colonies, humans sat up. They rewound. They played that sentence again. That was your last mistake. Inside Earth's delegation ship, the lights had dimmed to red alert. Kane entered the command center, where her chief strategist, Commander Ives, waited with a data pad. They pulled funding. Closed trade. Sanctioned all Terran systems. Expected, Kane said. The ambassador to Delta Crucis just resigned. Publicly. Said Earth has become unmanageable. Kane accepted the data pad, skimming through layers of intelligence reports. Good. Let them think we're emotional. Ives hesitated. Do we proceed with the fallback? Kane's eyes never left the screen. No fallback. He frowned. Then what? We initiate silence doctrine. Now. Ives paled. All sectors? All. Send the code. He hesitated, then moved. Across human-controlled space, silent signals pulsed through quantum channels. Relay stations shut down. AI systems encrypted their cores. Orbital traffic vanished from long-range scanners. Colonies blacked out their comms. Human ships disappeared from transit logs. It was like Earth fell off the grid. Back in the chamber, Chancellor Trevik sipped his luminous wine and chuckled to an aide. Typical humans. Dramatic when denied attention. But by midnight cycle, the tone shifted. Reports poured in. Communications failed across sectors that relied on Terran systems. Automated logistics began to fail. Planetary networks stuttered. Military NAV maps lost real-time updates. Entire galactic supply chains slowed to a crawl. By morning, economic panic had begun. Earth didn't respond. Not to calls. Not to sanctions. Not to threats. Not to desperate messages from allies realizing too late what was happening. They had spoken once. They would not speak again. Inside Earth's high-orbit command core, Kane stood before a massive display of the galaxy, its trade routes flickering like severed veins. She tapped her finger to her comlink. Prepare Phase 2. But Admiral, Ives said cautiously, they still believe this is a tantrum. She turned to him. Then let's teach them what a human temper really looks like. And deep within the void, Terran fleets began to move, not toward battle, but toward leverage. Their silence was not absence. It was precision. And it was only just beginning. The silence that followed Earth's withdrawal was louder than any war drum. No declaration, no warning. Just gone. One by one, Terran colonies stopped transmitting. Orbital stations that once pulsed with life dimmed to black. Cargo lanes emptied of their familiar Terran freighters, replaced by ghostly voids. The trade routes that kept the Republic fed and fueled began to stall, then fracture. At first, the Senate dismissed it. Let them sulk, they said. Earth was always too emotional, too proud. Let them realize their irrelevance in isolation. But isolation was never the plan. By the fifth day, the outer systems began reporting failures. Navigation arrays went offline. Entire clusters lost sync with quantum relays whose maintenance had quietly been overseen by human engineers for decades. Terraforming grids on frontier planets began to glitch. Food shipments delayed. Atmospheric stabilizers misfired. The Senate called it coincidence. Then it called it sabotage. But no proof came. Only the slow, growing rot of systems once reliant on unnoticed Terran support. On the 10th day, the Kalari Banking Authority suspended interstellar credit exchanges. Their AI network, co-developed by Terran cyberneticists, began rejecting authentication from core government servers. Thousands of financial transactions froze. Billion credit fleets sat idle in orbit, unable to fuel, to move, to command. The panic began quietly. Investors fled. Border planets hoarded supplies. Republic patrols increased, but even their encryption had begun to fail. Human-coded firmware had always run silently beneath the surface. Now it was silent with purpose. At the heart of the storm, Admiral Sylvia Kane stood aboard the Dauntless, Earth's command vessel, hidden beyond the heliosphere of Epsilon Eridani. The bridge buzzed with quiet efficiency. Reports flowed in, system by system. No chaos. No attack. Just the methodical collapse of a galaxy built on human infrastructure. Status of the Arcturus corridor? Kane asked. Dead, replied Commander Ives. All transport out of Saran Prime halted. Their fleet's been grounded. No fuel coordination. No payment clearance. Any attempts to reverse engineer the systems? 2. One exploded. Kane nodded. Broadcast nothing. We let the silence do the talking. Ives leaned in. Admiral, if I may, when do we show them our hand? Kane's eyes remained on the star map. When they beg us to. That moment arrived sooner than expected. By day 15, a Senate emergency session was called. High Chancellor Trevik looked less like a statesman and more like a cornered animal, his voice strained behind forced calm. "Representatives," he said, "we must consider re-engagement with Earth." The chamber buzzed with outrage. "They abandoned the Republic," shouted the Valari ambassador. "And took the Republic with them," muttered another. Trevik lifted a trembling hand. "We underestimated their integration. That was short-sighted. But we cannot bow. That would show weakness." A new voice broke in, uninvited. Not from within the chamber. A flicker in the air became a projection. Kane stood tall in holographic clarity, her arms clasped behind her back, eyes unwavering. "You're not being asked to bow," she said. "You're being asked to account." Trevik jolted. "How did you gain access to this channel?" "You built your security on our code," she replied. "You never bothered to learn how it worked." The room fell deathly quiet. Kane let the silence stretch before speaking again. "You voted us out. You laughed. Called us obsolete. Now you cannot eat, travel, trade, or breathe without us." Trevik snapped. "Are you threatening us with extinction?" "No. I'm offering you a lesson. Extinction is what happens when arrogance outruns wisdom. You've ruled too long without consequence. This is consequence." The chamber exploded with noise, demands, protests, curses. Kane spoke through it all, her voice like steel over fire. "You want your galaxy back? Then admit what you've become. And rebuild something better. Or stay stubborn. Let your empire collapse under the weight of your pride. Either way, Earth survives." She cut the transmission. Back on the Dauntless, Ives stared in silence. "That's it? You think they'll listen?" "They won't," Kane said. "But their people will." Already, protests had begun on core worlds. Starvation loomed on outer colonies. Local leaders defied Senate orders and reached out to Earth, quietly, urgently. Earth did not respond. Not yet. The silence grew teeth. Food riots spread across border planets. Mining guilds collapsed. Pirate factions seized control of vulnerable sectors. A galaxy built on Terran dependability now stood naked and shivering. 20 days in, the Senate cracked. The interim defense minister sent a secret channel request. Earth's systems ignored it. 5 more followed. Silence. On the 25th day, Kane received an encrypted package. A voice-only plea from Chancellor Trevik. "I was wrong," he said. "You were right. We were blind. I beg you, help us restore order. Name your terms." Kane played the message twice, then deleted it. "Send word to Titan Command," she ordered. Phase 2. Begin limited restoration in sectors that renounce the Senate. Ives raised a brow. "That's 3 systems total." "For now," she replied. "They'll spread the word." As ships moved silently through the dark, powering grids and feeding hungry colonies, the galaxy learned something it had forgotten. Earth didn't need permission to be powerful. It only needed the decision to stop helping. The Zenari Armada entered Terran space without ceremony. No warning, no negotiation. Just brute ships, swollen with arrogance, and shielded by Senate approval, drifting in formation like carrion birds over a battlefield they believed already won. The commander of the fleet, Lord High Strategist Kaltran Voss, had one objective: occupy Earth's former colonies in the Seraph Belt and seize control of the dormant Terran outposts. To him, it was cleanup work. To his crew, it was a reward. To Earth, it was confirmation. They still didn't understand. From his throne of alloy and ivory aboard the lead dreadnought, Voss watched as his scouts reported no resistance. The human colonies appeared abandoned. Power grids inactive. Defense satellites offline. Ghost worlds. "Pathetic," he muttered. "They turned their backs on the Republic and now crawl into the dirt like vermin." "Shall we begin extraction?" asked his second-in-command. "Deploy drones. Secure the resource sites. And record everything," he said. I want this disgrace documented in full. 12 drones launched toward the surface of Carthus Station, once a key Terran logistics hub. They made it 2 kilometers before each one exploded in perfect synchronicity. The bridge of Voss Dreadnought fell silent. What was that? Unknown detonation, replied the tech officer. Simultaneous across all platforms. They were. He paused. They were baited. There were low-yield plasma mines integrated into the docking sequences. Voss stood slowly. That station is inactive. The officer nodded. Visibly, yes. But there's active signal scrambling below its surface. Human encryption. High tier. Voss turned to his tactical screen. What else is buried out there? Before an answer could form, every sensor lit up. Across the system, dozens of Terran warships decloaked. No broadcasts. No threats. Just black holes like shadows peeling from space itself. Silent. Precise. A new voice filled Voss Comms channel. Fleet Sonari, this is Captain Dax Mercer of the Terran Black Division. You are trespassing in restricted space. Voss snarled. You abandoned these colonies. They are no longer protected under Republic jurisdiction. You're mistaken, Mercer replied. We didn't abandon them. We baited you. The line cut. The battle began. It wasn't a firefight. It was an execution. The Zenari fleet fired first, predictably. Plasma bolts surged toward the nearest Terran ship. But before they could connect, the missiles twisted mid-flight, redirected by electronic jamming systems that shouldn't have existed. Terran vessels moved with surgical precision, weaving between enemy fire, striking only command nodes, fuel conduits, and propulsion systems. They weren't aiming to destroy. They were disabling. Disarming. Demoralizing. Voss screamed for a full counterstrike. His orders never landed. Every command relay in his network had been corrupted 10 minutes before he arrived in the system. Earth hadn't waited for war, they had anticipated it down to the millisecond. Within 15 minutes, 5 Zenari cruisers were disabled. 3 more had been pulled by tractor webs into controlled drift orbits. 1 attempted retreat. It was allowed to leave. 1. A message. Inside the chaos, Voss watched his own dreadnought systems begin to fail. Lights flickered. Weapons powered down. Control over thrusters lost. A hologram appeared in front of him uninvited. Admiral Kane's face emerged from the blue mist, expression calm. This isn't a retaliation, she said. It's a warning. Voss growled. You think this proves anything? Yes, she said. It proves we were never weak. Just patient. Voss bared his teeth. The Senate will never tolerate this. They already did, she said. You just don't know it yet. The hologram vanished. His ship went dark. In orbit, the Terran fleet repositioned. No pursuit. No destruction. Just presence. A silent announcement that Earth had drawn its line. Across the galaxy, the footage spread like wildfire. Not from Terran sources, they never released it. It came from the Zenari escape pod, the one Kane allowed to flee. It broadcast the humiliation of the Senate's elite ally to every major system before being intercepted. Back on Earth, Kane reviewed the damage report. 0 casualties. 8 vessels disabled. No structural losses. Enemy fleet neutralized. And the galaxy watched. Ives leaned forward. Do we begin the next stage? Kane shook her head. No. Let them sit with this. We want the fear to settle in, not pass like a fever. He studied her face. They underestimated us again. No, she corrected. They've always feared what we might become. This was just their reminder. Elsewhere, Republic leadership spun chaos into excuses. Trevor called it an unfortunate misunderstanding, while claiming the Zenari had acted without appropriate oversight. Behind closed doors, panic ruled. Star systems once loyal to the Republic began establishing back channels with Earth. Not alliances, yet, but feelers. Inquiries. Terms. Earth remained quiet. No statements. No threats. No celebration. Just action. Deliberate. Relentless. Measured. And the rest of the galaxy finally began to understand what the Senate never had. You don't silence Earth. You just give it a reason to speak louder. Trevik sat in the war room, alone despite the dozens of diplomats on screen. No one looked him in the eye. They asked questions, made demands, blamed the Zenari for overstepping, Earth for overreacting, each other for inaction. No solutions. Just panic disguised as protocol. He raised a hand. The room fell quiet. Where is Earth now? An aide, young and far too anxious, responded. Still silent, sir. But we've confirmed Black Division vessels are holding position around key trade routes. Nothing's moving without their permission. Permission? Trevik repeated, tasting the word like poison. They've restored communication to 3 systems who severed ties with us. Those colonies are now functioning under Terran protection. Defections. The aide hesitated. Realignments. Trevik cut the channel. Silence in the room. It stretched, pulling tighter with every breath. His fingers tapped once on the steel table, then twice. They're not retaliating, he murmured. They're replacing us. He stood, not out of authority, but necessity. The weight of collapse was no longer a fear. It was a fact. Earth had moved without violence, rebuilt trust without asking, cut the arteries of power and let the Senate watch itself bleed. And they hadn't fired a single weapon in this new phase. Not yet. He opened the emergency channel to the command grid above Lumina Prime. Lock the capital, he ordered. Shut the orbital gates. All incoming and outgoing traffic, halt it. Sir, that'll disrupt. Disruptions already began the moment we dismissed them. Just do it. The line ended. Then reopened, uninvited. Bit late for a lockdown, Chancellor. Came a voice. Calm. Familiar. Terrifying in its precision. Trevik froze. Admiral Kane stood again in full projection across the chamber floor. Not a message. A live feed. How did you get this frequency? You keep asking that. Maybe one day you'll listen to the answer. You're violating Republic sovereignty. You voted Earth out of your sovereignty. Your words. Not mine. What do you want? She folded her arms. I'm not here to ask. Trevik moved to kill the transmission. The panel didn't respond. The room's lights dimmed. Every screen shifted. A schematic of Lumina Prime's infrastructure filled the walls, power, atmosphere, defenses, all blinking yellow. Kane tilted her head. You built this place on Terran firmware. You kept the keys, but we kept the code. You wouldn't dare. I would have years ago. Now? I just authorize. Outside, above Lumina Prime, something changed. The stars began to blink. Not from movement, but from ships, hundreds of them, decloaking across orbit. Terran vessels silent and still. No formation. No aggression. Just presence. Trevik's voice wavered. You want to conquer the capital? We don't need it. We came to return something. Without prompt, a timer appeared on the screens, 10 minutes. What is that? The archive, Kane said. Every record of your governance. Every amendment, every vote, every bribe, buried in your own vault system. A monument to your decay. You can't access that. I did. 23 minutes ago. Trevik's face blanched. That data belongs to the Republic. That Republic ended when you sold justice for convenience. He lunged to the console. The system was frozen. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. The countdown continued. You're threatening to erase history? I'm preserving truth. You'll destabilize every system that relies on. No, she said. You already did that. I'm just removing the lie you wrapped it in. He slammed his fist on the console. This will cause a war. War requires resistance, Kane said. You're out of allies. Out of leverage. All that remains is choice. Trevik's breath came fast, shallow. What choice? Surrender your seat. Dissolve the council. Publicly. Call for reform, not in words, but in structure. Or I finish what you started. The timer hit 4 minutes and 12 seconds. He looked around. None of his aides moved. None defended him. They were watching the end. Not of an office, but an era. And maybe something better after. He whispered. If I do this, you'll stop? Kane didn't smile. She didn't need to. We're not here to conquer. We're here to correct. Why? She looked directly at him. Because the galaxy doesn't need rulers. It needs repair. He closed his eyes. Fine, he breathed. Broadcast the session. I'll read the statement. No, Kane said. You'll speak freely. Or not at all. The timer froze at 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Systems returned to control. Lights stabilized. But the fleet above Lumina Prime remained. Trevik stood before the Senate chamber an hour later. Unscripted. Unprepared. Uncertain. I come before you not in power, but in recognition. Of failure. Of hubris. Of blindness. He swallowed. The Republic as we knew it is unsalvageable. And I no longer claim authority over it. He stepped down. No applause. No protest. Just breath held across the galaxy. From space, the Terran fleet turned in unison. Not to attack. To leave. And for the first time in a generation, the galaxy saw Earth not as a rebel, but as a reckoning. 6 weeks after the Senate dissolved, the galaxy still held its breath. Worlds that once operated under strict protocol now drifted in uncertainty. Trade stations rebooted under provisional oversight. Defense fleets stood idle, waiting for new orders from a chain of command that no longer existed. Everyone was watching Earth, but Earth had said nothing. The silence continued, not as threat this time, but as challenge. A test to see who would lead without a leash. In the absence of Senate control, dozens of systems collapsed. Others adapted, coordinated through back channels opened discreetly by Terran operatives. Earth never claimed jurisdiction. It never imposed rule. It offered aid with no flags, guidance with no demands. And slowly, carefully, something new began to take root, networks of cooperation not built on dominance, but necessity. The Chancellor's resignation had been the beginning of a purge. Investigations swept through the remnants of the Senate's old structure. Bankers, contractors, envoys, all under scrutiny. Some tried to flee. A few disappeared. Most surrendered. Those who had profited off silence now found themselves dragged into the light. At the center of this quiet revolution stood Admiral Sylvia Kane. She refused titles. Refused broadcasts. She declined the invitation to lead a new coalition and instead remained aboard the Dauntless, orchestrating the dismantling of systems she had once served within. Her message was simple: Earth didn't want power. It wanted balance. Inside the reconstructed Nexus chamber on the neutral world of Tavares, the first gathering of the new accord was held. No thrones. No hierarchy. No golden emblems or ceremonial guards. Just a wide table, flat, round, and occupied by representatives who had earned the right to be heard through action, not lineage. Ambassador Sato of Earth was not a soldier. She wore no medals, gave no speeches. She sat with her tablet and listened more than she spoke. When it was her turn, she stood calmly and offered a single proposal. "We recommend a rotating council of 5 systems," she said. "Term limited. Equal in vote. Any economic or military decision requires unanimous agreement, and public transmission of all deliberation records." A pause. Then murmurs. The Threxian envoy leaned forward. "And who decides which systems rotate?" Sada looked up. "The people. You think the galaxy is ready for democracy?" "I don't think it's ready," she said. "I think it's overdue." The proposal passed within the hour. Outside the chamber, a reporter intercepted Sato as she stepped into the corridor. "Ambassador, many still believe Earth orchestrated this collapse to gain control. What would you say to those who fear Terran dominance? She didn't blink. They should be afraid. But not of our dominance, of their own inaction. We didn't win anything. We stopped losing. The feed went viral. Not because of outrage, but recognition. From frontier colonies to core worlds, humans were no longer the mysterious war-capable diplomats in the background. They were the proof that silence wasn't surrender, and that strength didn't need spectacle. On the third day of the Accord's formation, a message was transmitted to Earth from a former senator now in exile. "You won," it read. "So why not take the throne?" Kane read it twice, then deleted it. Winning had never been the goal. In a secure command room beneath the Terran surface, a handful of officers monitored the galaxy-wide pulse of new systems joining the Accord. "I've entered with a datapad. 93 signatures," he said. "More coming in hourly. Most requesting Terran advisors to aid their transition. Assign only volunteers," Kane said. "We're not rebuilding an empire. You know they'll offer leadership. Real leadership. Seats. Power. Flags. Let them." He paused. "But not us?" She looked out across the holographic map. "Earth doesn't belong on a throne. We're the reason it crumbled the first time. They'll say you saved the galaxy?" "No," she said. "We reminded it how to save itself." He left without arguing. Later that day, the Dauntless moved to high orbit above Earth. Kane stood alone in the observatory deck, watching as the planet rotated slowly below. Not in triumph. Not in grief. Just in silence. A quiet ping interrupted her thought. A message from an outer colony, recently admitted to the Accord. A young governor. No rank. No legacy. Just a question. "What now?" Kane smiled faintly. She typed one word. "Build." Then powered down the terminal. Across the stars, the fleets dispersed. The silence remained, but now, it was not threat or warning. It was peace. And for the first time in centuries, it didn't come from law. It came from choice.